Sí, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, 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 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3, 4, probando, cabina de inglés, sí, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. Uno, dos, tres probando, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3 probando, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cabina de audio, cabina de inglés, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3 probando, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 3, sí, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, ¿ya? Sí, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando, haciendo prueba de audio, haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cabina de inglés, haciendo prueba de audio. Cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. Sí, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés. Haciendo prueba de audio, 1, 2, 3, 4, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. Sí, 1, 2, ¿eh? Sí, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés. Sí, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. Sí, 1, 2, 3 probando, haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 4, haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. Cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 2, 3 probando, cabina de inglés, cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3 probando, 1, 2, haciendo prueba de audio. Sí, 1, 2, 1, 2, haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Haciendo prueba de audio, cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3, probando, 1, 2, 3, probando. Dime.
Cabina de inglés, 1, 2, 3, haciendo pruebas de audio. Muy buenos días, estamos haciendo pruebas de audio desde la cabina de inglés. 1, 2, 3, 4, muy buenos días. Nos encontramos haciendo prueba de audio. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, muy buenos días. Nos encontramos haciendo pruebas de audio. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Ya, perfecto, gracias.
morning, everyone. We would like to welcome you to this special parliamentary hearing presided over by Ana Maria Mari Machado, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of Cuba, as well as Yolanda, Lady González Ferrer, General Attorney of the Republic. We also have accompanying as the President of the National Election School, Lina Balseiro Gutierrez. We are also accompanied by Carla Santana, President of the Federation of University Students, and Eileen Alvarez, First Secretary of the Youth Communist League, among other outstanding personalities, among which I would like to specially mention Brigade Army Elsa Esther, who are honoring us with their attendance. In the ordinary session of the National Assembly, we adopted the specific item in which we were supposed to have a people's consultation to debate the Families Code. And this way we started meeting in the Parliament the 11th first transitory decision of the Republic. The Commission of Constitutional Matters, together with the Association to take care of girls, women, and youth, and by the authority vested in it by the Law 131 of the dealing with the organization of the People's Power Assembly and the Council of State of the Republic of Cuba, agreed to call for this public hearing to go deeper in the knowledge and debates, and also to listen specific criteria about the important institutions considered in the Family Code of Cuba. The family's right, going together with differentiated interrelation with specific religions, beliefs, and also with hierarchy and social prejudices, have established in different social confirmations that have been human beings have been going through. We have been analyzing a network of opinions that put together and also separates human beings and different social status since they are born, giving them specific social position in life. Cuba was not away from this status, and in our country, the family right had been expressing before the main features of the societies they were living in, having differences between men and women, subordinating all these features to the fate of their spouses, and also speaking about the need of having equity, the inequity between legal and illegal sons and daughters, having them during marriage or not, recognizing them or not, protecting them from the parental way, and giving them some material here, led us to have a debate of these illegal paternity matter. Also, the persistent conception since the Roman times, in which the interest of sons and daughters is subordinated to the rights of the parents, was given a natural feature of what we call patria potestas. Up to the revolutionary triumph in 1959, when we established that these orders of matters started changing, reached its peak on May the 8th, 1975, when we established in Cuba and enforced the present family code. And during these years, we are honoring when Likewise, we are paying special tribute to all our women in the International Women's Day, all those women that, as Jose Marti said, live together with us as our live companies and not to our feet as beautiful toys. The change that is taking place for the family in our society is transcendental. From that moment on, women get into labor activities with the same payment and status as men, with total equity, and 53% of those who are part of a national assembly as member of parliament are women. Equity in all children assured in protecting kids. The right to health and to free education is also present, as well as it is the respect to maternity and childhood without any difference due to the link between parents. The permanent educational and cultural work which is led to eliminate all trace of discrimination is also present in our Constitution, as well as it is the demand of parents to maintain their kids, which interests are fundamental and predominant in the parents and children relationship. But our society, of course, is going forward and is developed and project in what is a social development with new values and concepts. And an expression of all this is the Constitution of the present Republic since April 2019. The most outstanding feature of the Catalan is the right established as well as the mechanisms to guarantee protection to those which are recognized. The first manifestation of our advances and progress and development I have referred to. Can anyone say that present society is the same we had 47 years ago? No one can say that, not even the most reluctant one. Some people are still trying to put someone in concepts, in ideas that have been changing through times, and concepts and dogmas have changed in the world. But nothing can keep society from development and going to higher social status. And together with all this, we have drafted this project, this bill of the family code. We are not imposing anyone the way we want the families to be, but we established and ratified different rules of ethical behavior, respect, and equity between different persons, which are to be respected in a society to guarantee life harmony between the members of this society. But the most important issue is that it recognizes and protects from the legal viewpoint different kinds of families and protects different people that we have in our society today. And we live with those peoples every single day of our lives, and they request their recognition and protection. And of course, we are to consider in this social justice stage is to support people, and this is part of we all in the same magnitude. I share with you that in the last day, some person from the legal world asked, from another country, he asked, how are you able to do this all? And then he said, why so controversial issues are taken for the people to consult and then to make a referendum to pass this instead of doing this in the National Assembly, in the Parliament? And then we answered back, we might have this people's consultation process because of the wide and extended work of the revolution that first of all taught all the people to read and write, and also because of a leader that was able to teach our people to be critical in their thoughts And always because he said, and also because he said, I don't tell anyone to believe, but to read. And in those principles, we base the development of this nation that is gated even to the remotest areas in the country. And of course, he was right. We might be doing all this, making all these decisions in the parliament, but then we wouldn't be the representatives of heroic and sacrifice people that honors us with their support, and we wouldn't be loyal to our people. One of the lessons we have learned from our revolution. We also have the obligation to be coherent with the idea that the sovereign power of the people is in the people, and with the idea that we are a government for the people, of the people, and in the people. And we are to be concerned or worried about nothing. These heroic and dignified people to which we believe, and we are honored to believe to these people, shall be wiser enough to teach lessons for this nation, and there is no doubt about that. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite to take the floor Dr. Aida Kemelmeyer Calducci, academician, full member of the Academy of Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Me siento
I'm very, very happy to be part of this participatory process that is taking place in Cuba with this project, which is going to be the Families Code in Cuba. I just wanted to tackle two main issues that have lead to some criticism in some sectors of society, and those topics might be, first, some issues related to what the code calls parental responsibility, and a second issue, which is more restricted, not so explicit, is what we call solidarity management. Let's go first to these parental issues. Some sectors have been saying that from the civil code have disappeared the possibility of parents to educate their kids. That's what some people are saying. But it's not so. Let's first start by what is criticized. We are trying, or you're trying in your code to keep the patria potestas, and that was the name given, but now we call that parental responsibility. So which of the two concepts is better understood by those receiving these possibilities, those who are supposed to be responsible for a minor? So patria potestas, both in Latin America or in Cuba or even here in Argentina, the word patria is not linked to the relation between parents and children. That comes from Latin language. Some people do not know Latin, so patria is not well understood by people. And potestas is not understood either. It's also in Latin, and we are aware of the fact the attributions given to parents in their obligations with kids are not potestas to the way that the government or tyrant might have towards its people. Indeed, what parents have are duties, attributions, responsibilities, but no way they have the power to be offensive or be imposing their ideas in their kids. This responsibility, together with another concept which is in the Cuban Code, responding to the International Convention for the Rights of Children, is the progressive autonomy. They are saying in the world, now kids are the one having the main mandate in a family. Well, indeed, to those people who are doing this criticism, I would like to ask them to read what the code bill, the code draft is saying. In its article 132, it is said that the parental responsibility says that it's an amount of faculties and attributions, but also duties and rights that respond, which are in the hand of parents, mommy, mother, and father, to be able to meet the function that we parents have towards their children, and that is, of course, what everyone understands as education, assistance, care, both in their personal or patrimonial context that are needed for children. And this all is for the benefit and for the interest of the children as included in the International Convention for the Right of Children. And of course, it's not the same a 3-year-old kid or a teenager, 13, 14 years old. This article 132 says as well that the function of parents is to be taken into practical terms with the capacity and the autonomy that children are getting year after year to be able to develop their personality and to be mature enough to be independent. Of course, it's no need for a law, for an act to include this. It's almost common sense. So we are not supposed to treat our kids same way when they are 3 or when they are 13 or 14. And if we are trying to make our kids of 18 years of age give a mandate to our kids, well, when they get to the age of 18, they wouldn't know what to do with the capacity that law have given them, because they have not been trained to make their own decisions. So I would like to call everyone, to those who are critical toward this parental responsibility concept, to read about the content of the bill and all the attributions which are given to parents, attributions to be able to have a social function like the representation, management, the education of children. And it's also in Article 134, they say that it's to give a positive education, non-violent education to children. This society we're living in is very aggressive, So violence is not supposed to be present in this children relationship, and it's necessary this relation to be able to keep communication not only with parents but also with grandparents, with cousins, and to have this affection and these kind of feelings, so that this function is implemented, so that kids respond to all these values we are looking for in our families. So family is that context in which we develop better our personality. And in the case of children, we are training their personality and we are teaching them how to face life. Article 134 speaks about the need to educate children in non-discrimination, and it's also important item D of this article, in which they speak about the need of parents to guarantee a free of violence environment. And I don't know, I do not understand how some people are able to criticize these rules, which are not perfect, of course, but that supports and reflects the reality of any Latin American country, as might be Argentina or Cuba, as long as I know about the reality in Cuba. We would like to thank Carmen for her statement, and we would like to invite Silvia Diaz Alabar, married person from Madrid, Spain. I would like to start by expressing my honor to be invited to share with you and to share the news that the Families Code in Cuba has been published in the Gazette, and the way we have analyzed in this project, though the final part has been including issues about family rights. But before, it was a participatory project for the whole society. This poses a special feature. It's not a law, a rule which is established by force, but includes the debate of the population. It's a real thing. A civil law is the closest to people, and family law is one of the sectors that is better expressing this closeness. Is the best way to express social relationship, and this family law has been analyzed in the world and has been changing in the world. And as the project, the bill we are saluting today, this Families Code is also a concept that was wide in speaking about families, not only one kind of family. Among the main features of this project, they included this project, this code that has not only a legal nature, but also some didactic programming issues. An example of this might be the detailed relation of duties which are contained in the parental responsibility in its Article 134. Seems to be that they are giving parents a guide in the best way to educate and train their kids. And if it is met, we might think that we are talking about perfect parents. But it's not necessary to be perfect to be a good parent, but this guide is good inspiration. This is also a brave project because the one drafting, wording it have not gone back when drafting it and including new concepts. So going away from the usual and established concepts and the consequences of the behavior of families and the coexistence with kids. They are supposed to develop their family life partially or totally with a new spouse of the father or the mother. So new obligations emerge from these new kind of unions, and it's important to analyze this situation, which is a challenge now included in this project, resulting in a very new situation. We would like to thank Dr. Alabar, and we would like to invite now to take the floor to Nelia Abud Castillo, Cuban professor who works in civil law department in Managua, Nicaragua. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for this possibility to share with you the good news that very soon we are planning to have a new families code for Cuba. There is no doubt that the great effort that has been done in establishing rules, in making debates, in consultation, which might be with the people or with the specialists, shall have very good results. I'm very proud before this bill because, as it is true, that it has been thought and designed to deal with the realities of Cuban families. This project is also a referent for Latin America, and this project was able to include the most important issues of the debates in Latin America. It's based on humanism, in respect for the dignity of persons. It is also multicultural. It's very respectful about differences. It's very inclusive and also shows maturity of the legal thought, which is to be admired. Progressive autonomy is considering the viewpoints of our children as long as their biological needs are increasing. It's also to consider teenagers adolescents as people who think and have opinions. This is not usually what we do with our kids. The Cuban project, indeed, in my point of view, has described a reality that already exists and that respect the rights of our citizens. You will tell me perhaps that the clothes we used to select for our kids were the same one we selected when they were 7 or 15, or that we listen to the opinion of a 16-year-old young person about the way to communicate with the father who has been in prison, let's say, for mistreating the mother. It doesn't matter if the father wants to see the child, but we have to listen to this young person, considering his or her maturity, considering her or his progressive maturity. These are not hypothetical issues, but real cases which are also and today considered in our justice system. We don't treat in need our kids the same way when they are 7 or when they are teenagers, because their psychological maturity is not the same either, and we are not to treat everyone the same way. For instance, if there is a divorce and we have to determine a visits and communication system between parents and fathers and kids, are we supposed to listen to our kids about this visits system to be established? Or let's say if we are planning to have an adoption process of a teenager, is it possible that we listen to the teenager in facing this adoption system that is going to change his life? Just to mention 2 examples about this matter, but it also illustrates the cases and circumstances in which the Cuban project introduces progressive autonomy. It's not true at all that progressive autonomy means that kids get mad at their parents and they make their own decisions. That's not progressive autonomy. That is not the logical idea of this code. Progressive autonomy in the family's code is to have better behavior in a legal context for our kids. It's an active listening from our kids by specialists in legal matters that will evaluate or assess their opinions. And this assessment means that not everything that is said by children should be done, or that everything they say is necessarily good for them. That's why adults are going together with the growth of our kids. Progressive autonomy is not either an invention of the Cuban project. Progressive autonomy is a concept that has been included in international treaties for kids, for children, that includes the active participation of teenagers, girls, and boys in all processes when we debate about their rights. The Cuban project also deals with progressive autonomy in 10 moments, and it's included in 25 articles. In all of those articles, we are thinking in the idea of boys, girls, and teenagers as subject of law, and we are to respect their ideas with the ponderation criteria and assessment.
Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Castillo. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Felipe de Maria, lawyer from Bologna, Italy. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank the National Assembly of the People's Power, the President of Legal and Institutional Matters Commission. I would like to compare the Code of the Families in Cuba that will be submitted to people's consultation, and also the family law in Italy. Article 1 sets out that the standards in this norm are applied to all families regardless of the way of the organization they adopt. They follow the principles, values, rules enshrined in the Constitution, as well as by international treaties. I would like to highlight that Cuba has ratified the Convention of the Rights of the Child that was endorsed on the 20th of November 1989. Now, there are 4 principles regarding the rights of the child of non-discrimination, the ultimate right of children and teenagers, the right to life, survival, development of childhood and adolescence, and also to listen to the opinions of children. Article 18 of that same convention establishes that the member states will do their best to acknowledge these principles, that both parents have common obligations regarding the raising up and development of the child. It is true, while analyzing the draft of this Code of the Families, the family is responsible for ensuring for children the full enjoyment of their rights to be heard, to participate in the decision-making process within the family, to enjoy coexistence among the family, and also co-responsibility of the parents. These standards is in line with the law of the Italian Code. The responsibility of the parents, both parents have the responsibility, the parental responsibility to get into an agreement, bearing in mind the capacity and the attitudes of the child. The parents jointly agree on these. They establish what has to be done. The Italian Code tried to avoid the ancient phrase patria potestas, because it's outdated for many times, and it was replaced by parental responsibility that have to do with the reference of duties of both parents towards their children. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Felipe de Maria. And now, I would like to give the floor to Deputy Jose Raúl Palmero. And we're honored to have him in the audience today. Good morning, deputies, guests, friends of Cuba and the world who have united us. The legal order in Cuba is in a crucial time. The implementation of a legislative timetable that has developed this text has set a landmark in our history of law. In 2019, it was approved with the majority of the population our new constitution. This text set hierarchies about rights and laws in the family environment. And in this draft, we're trying to implement, while through referendum, we're trying to approve new emancipating content. Also, this draft is not going to innovate, but rather to develop the achievements that were already acknowledged in our Constitution. From the standpoint of the legal ordering and the principles, the new draft code includes the ideas of Martí, and he said, I want that the first law is the right of Cuban to full dignity. This is a principle that is enshrined in the Constitution that surpasses its declarative scope, and this is actually a right in the relevant title. This reference is not just a mere expression, but it represents the cornerstone in this law. Equity, social justice, solidarity, the like approach of the state and main approach of this text are part of the cornerstone of this code. The Carta Magna also enjoys the indivisible right, independent of human rights, in correspondence with the principles of equality, progressive, and non-discrimination. It regulates the right of people to full integrity, free development of personality, personal identity, equality, safety, and social security. In this regard, the draft code is against any kind of discrimination in the family environment. It respects the tradition regarding the order of surnames, but based on common agreement, something different can be arranged. It also includes that the marriage might take place among two people with full opportunities to ask for adoption, and also implies a greater protection for those who have worked at home, as well as proclaims the parental co-responsibility through the shared care for children. Since the very Constitution, we do away with the traditional notion of marriage, characterizing this as a legal entity that is based on full rights and the capacity of the spouses. They acknowledge also the unity based on affection. The constitutional text was not limited to proclaim this achievement, but it regulated them as protected content. Therefore, then the title of the reform is established when it refers to the modification of rights and duties. Another approval be required by 2/3 of the total number of deputies. They would have to favor the majority of voters in referendum. The Constitution also includes in this title a chapter that has to do with the families, that is positioned on inclusion, plurality, non-discrimination, and promotes the evolution, the use of language. Any person has the right to found a family. The state protects families regardless of their way or organization. Article 81 also acknowledges the different bonds of fact or social affective bonds. Regarding the rights of children, the Constitution weighs the equality of all children as well as non-discrimination by nature or affiliation. Likewise, it includes the principle of ultimate right of children and their consideration as subjects of right. And so this was assumed in the country based on the approval after our Constitution of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. This draft includes the rights of infants and adolescents in the family environment. Along this line, it expands the concept of food supply linked to affection and education. The Constitution is in favor of the reciprocal responsibility among parents and children. In line with this, the draft also devotes a title to the topic of discrimination, intra-family violence, setting landmarks, and also legal consequences. Great benefit is also given to people in situation of disability and vulnerability through different types of support. Comrades, all the Constitution of the Republic of Cuba in its transitory standard 11th mandates the Assembly to establish a consultation process on the Code of the Families that we're currently developing, and a referendum that we follow. We're faced with a legislative proposal that is quite advanced, that will be further enriched with the wisdom and the support of the population. We are certain that the aforementioned will be a new victory of the Cuban people in its endeavors to build a fairer society that is alternative to the dictatorship of capital. We shall continue the dreams of Bill Maspin and the essence of the Cuban Revolution led by a Commander-in-Chief, Fidel Castro. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al diputado.
I would like to thank Deputy Jose Raul Palmero. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Yamila Gonzalez Ferrer, professor at the University of Havana and Vice President of the National Union of Jurists from Cuba.
Buenos días.
Good morning. First and foremost, today that we are celebrating a significant date, that is the struggle of women for their vindication, for their rights. I would like to refer to a topic that has generated a lot of debate, but is also included in this struggle of different groups that have been historically affected, vulnerable with regard to their right. I'm talking to the incorporation in our draft code of the possibility to have marriage and union for people of the same gender and the possibility to adopt children. I mean, so that people, couples of the same sex can also have the right to adopt children. We will have to wonder if we could have true love without respect for rights of people who we say we love. If we have understood the scope of the constitutional text that was approved by the majority of the population when it comes to equality, non-discrimination, and human dignity. And we must also wonder what the impact of all these at the family level. We have expressed systematically in all debates, consultations, that this is a code of opportunities, alternatives of additions and multiplication. It guarantees rights for those who did not have them, but in no way is limiting or depriving people from the rights that were already acknowledged for other people. It does not set out frames, so they do not make people forced to choose the family model that they want. Is wide, inclusive, and it develops many family institutions that is the ultimate reflection of the family situation in Cuba at its full expression. The families exist in our society. We have them in our everyday life. They are part and parcel of our own families. Even nevertheless, many people who do not share these issues that have been added to the draft code commonly say, I do not discriminate anyone but, and they consider that access to certain institutions should be hampered. I'm talking about access to these people because of their human condition, and they say there's a damage that this can cause to families themselves, to the societies, and they also argue that our society is not ready for that. It is understood, many people may now like different types of life choices that they may want to create a model or a family under specific circumstances or under different conditions. This is legitimate. But please notice when what is being rejected is the fact to acknowledge rights, is that they're not protected. I mean, I'm talking about these certain groups that are not protected, so it goes beyond issuing a single opinion. We are assuming also a discrimination behavior, and we cannot deceive ourselves. We cannot think in abstract. We cannot think that we're all equal, but in concrete, in practice, some should be more equal than others, but simply this is a discrimination, and this is an anti-constitutional behavior. And in this regard, we have to get back to the Cuban Constitution, endorsed by 86% of our population, and banned discrimination in all ways, because any human condition, whatever it may be. And it's also linked to the human dignity. And what does it imply? What human dignity implies if every people might have the freedom to choose its own life model, and this life model should be guaranteed and acknowledged so that their rights can also be acknowledged. Ultimately, sexual orientation, gender identity, as well as the color of the skin, religious beliefs, the territorial origin, the situation of disability, in no way, I mean, it cannot make a difference. And these categories are the ones that make us better or worse human beings, because it's linked to the values, the principle, the attitude, the responsibilities that we all have versus life. That's why I consider that it's quite advanced, I would say, this acknowledgement of all rights for all people without any kind of discrimination. To conclude, I would also like to make a statement, and no doubt the struggles of people based on their gender identity or sexual orientation is very much linked to these movements to vindicate their own rights. But I also consider that has been enshrined in this project in the Code of the Families related to this topic is also a result of the work of the revolution, not solely of the struggle of the movement of LGBT movements. And in our reality, these struggles have been articulated based on contradiction and hurdles that any human work may have. Likewise, these struggles for the rights of women, black and mulatto people, we would have been able to move forward had it not been by the revolution. Nevertheless, no matter women may be socially integrated, they are the ones that have greater burden at the household, and they're the main victims of gender violence. No matter we have been fighting against racial discrimination, still access of black people is hard to leadership positions, and they live in conditions of marginal conditions. The political will to do away with discrimination that are present in our subjectivity, that have been there for centuries, that cannot be eliminated by a decree, and that have an influence on everyday life. This is indispensable, and it facilitates to move forward. This draft code of the families is an example of that, the humanistic work of social justice and therefore anti-discriminatory of the social work of the Cuban Revolution is proven, and it's a great work of love that under these circumstances we're fostering. I thank you. Thank you, actually.
A continuación, invito a hacer uso de la palabra a la doctora Yanet Souto Fernández, profesora de la Universidad de La Habana y abogado litigante.
And a lawyer herself.
Buenos días.
Good morning. I would like to congratulate all women in this International Women's Day. I would like to thank those who have cooperated to put together this public hearing regarding the draft code and the possibility to share with you criteria and reflection when it comes to private international law linked to this draft. This draft regulates very clearly the right applicable to any international family institution, reflect the Cuban reality, the internationalization of the legal relations, and it finds solutions for conflicts among laws. As an example, today in the Civil Code, there are 3 standards regarding international law that establish as a point of connection the citizenship of the parents that sometimes does not match the citizenship of the minor. Therefore, this draft law establishes point of connection, personal techniques based on the residence of the weak link of this international relation. When it comes to parental responsibility, it sets out the domicile of the minor as a point of conversion that presents the closest links with this law that will regulate the content of the parental responsibility, a number of attribution, rights, duties that are part of this content. Therefore, this technique of the code is in line with the most advanced techniques when it comes to international private law. In this same regard, it defines the public order, a number of principles, values that substantiate the legal regime at the family level in Cuba, and therefore are in line with the protection of the rights of girls, boys, and teenagers. And therefore, if this foreign law that is applicable by mandate of these standards of private international law are incompatible with the public order in Cuba, it would not be applied, and they would apply the Cuban Family Code. So this is regulated when it comes to the subtraction of minors or related to the retention and subtraction of minors. This is done very well, and the relevant courts that know about this international family conflict should do their best to restitute these children to their place of residence in accordance with what is established in the Constitution of the Republic of Cuba, in the international treaties as the Convention of The Hague when it comes to this international subtraction of children, the Convention of the Rights of the Child that integrate the legal framework by constitutional mandate. Therefore, this is a draft law of the Code of Families that is advanced with many good points that find solution for different international family conflicts, and they do in the right way in accordance with these international treaties. These are the important aspects I would like to draw your attention on. This is a new title in correspondence with these treaties, and it also finds solutions for these legal conflicts, this litigation from international families. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, doctors.
A continuación, invitamos a hacer uso de la palabra a la doctora María Berenice Díaz.
Maria Berenice Diaz, Vice President of the Brazilian Institute of Family Law. I would like to thank Professor Leonardo. I had the possibility to access the draft code of the families in Cuba. I would like to confess publicly that this is one of the tools that is the most modern tools I've ever had the chance to know. It's very up to date. It contributes to everything we have trying to look for when it comes to making progress, when it comes to acknowledging the rights of the current society that is actually before our eyes. It's useless try to overlook this or to deny the rights, because this is the best way that we have to condemn someone, to be invisible. One of the first things that surprised me was the number of principles enshrined in this code, something that is quite unusual, unless here in Brazil we do not have them. And also the establishment of absolute equality among women and men, and also the balanced distribution of the term to undertake household chores. And this is very meaningful to do away with this structural or macho approach. Bear in mind that is still present in the conservative society we live in. And also the freedom that women have on their own body to decide about the amount of children they want to have, and in this case their will prevails. This is one of the rights that the women need to have guaranteed, and that they don't have in most world countries. And of course they don't have these right guarantees either in Brazil. And there are many other positions that are very meaningful as to the possibility to have a notarial divorce on an agreed fashion, even if their children, their minor children, are disabled children. It is obvious, because if the divorce is mutually agreed, if the couple has already decided how the coexistence will be arranged, children, the alimonies, there is no need for this process to be a legal process, even because the judge does not preside over a hearing. Therefore, it means that the parents decide what they want to do. But here in Brazil, still we need to go through the legal path And of course, we have so many of these processes, even though they have decided on mutual agreement that they want to put an end to marriage. And there are many other matters that are involved. Also, there's something that is very modern, and it's the establishment of the coexist with pets. This is a jurisprudential thing that is very important. I had never seen this before in another law that may have this also. And the objective is to assign a vision on the assets, also attaching importance to domestic work and caring for children or elderly. This is very important. This is perfect because this imbalance is still present, although people have issued their opinions in this regard.
Agradecemos la intervención de...
We thank Dr. Berenice Diaz, and now give the floor to Dr. Silvia Eugenia Fernandez, an expert on family law from Argentina. Good morning. I am Silvia Fernandez. I am the defender of children and teenagers in Argentina, and I am here to participate in this democratic and deliberation process of Cuba for passing the new family code. In this short time, I'll try to express the absolute fulfillment of this new draft and as to the international standards for human rights concerning the rights of children and teenagers, based on the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the general opinions of its Interpretation Commission. A profound look at this new family code gives children an essential notion for relations in the family, in line with Article 3 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and other documents. This is part of two other notions of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, namely the notion of a progressive autonomy and the right of children to air their views and that they are taken into account. In this way, locally and domestically, you see the statements of Article 5 of the Convention on Progressive Autonomy and the right of children to be listened to. That is also expressed in Remark 12 of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. It is the standard for this progressive autonomy. It includes two notions, age and maturity, after the evolution of faculties of children, or abilities of children, which defines the essential principles to exercise the rights of children, but also the exercise by the parents as to parental responsibility. The Family Code, therefore, recognizes specifically the participation of children in their evolution, their participation as to parental acts, the obligation of parents to listen to them in their evolution, and it includes contemporary ideas of their participation in digital spaces that should be respected of their autonomy and intimacy and their personal rights, and to curb the abuses in this regard, in this general observation of Remark 25 on the rights of the child in digital spaces. This progressive autonomy is also shown in the procedural attendance when it comes to adoption. It is established that children are part of the adoption and the assistance of attorneys if they are old enough, and from 7 they must give their consent, and even if they are younger, if they show maturity enough. This progressive autonomy is also seen in the amendments to the Civil Code by recognizing children their right to carry out all acts under the law, and for those having to do with their personal rights. For example, there's the possibility of self-protection acts onto right signed wills. Also, it is also important to say that the draft family code, and as Cuba doesn't have an integrated law for protection of rights of children and teenagers, is important. It has to do with the principles of adoption, families splitting, temporary, exceptional separation situations, always giving them the return to their family of origin with a specific affection standards, and only at the last resort institutional support, having in mind the standards of the Committee of the Rights of the Child, but also Inter-American Right of Human Rights and Inter-American Court of Human Rights, on the prevalence of children in their families, and only exceptional, their family separation for the shortest time possible, always taking account of their environment in the family of origin, by keeping contact with their families. Another important matter that is included under the notion of their interest is the registration of the many vulnerability situations they may face. This notion refers to an important transcendental matter in the dynamics of human rights implementation. It has to do with other factors besides age, for situations such as sex, gender identity, ethnic origin, disabilities, political and other matters. Multiple vulnerabilities is a notion. It is part of the family code as specific causes from given by discrimination, and that may lead to reparations. To conclude, there is also the inclusion of a specific section in the Family Code on the rights of disabled persons, according to the International Convention for that matter. It includes essential matters as support, reasonable adjustments, the recognition of evolutionary capacities of children and their sexual rights and reproductive and non-reproductive rights, and their sexual education on an equal footing with other children. In this case, you meet the standards on the Convention for Disabled Persons. In this sense, the Family Code draft is part of the Convention and the Constitution. So, after this short presentation, I would like to support the amendments for the Family Code to make the Family Code more humane and more committed with the rights of vulnerable people, particularly children and teenagers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Eugenia Fernandez. And now we'll give the floor to Dr. Cristian Lepe Molina, Professor of Family Law of the University of Chile. Good morning. I am Cristian Molina. I am Professor of the Chile University. I specialize in family law, and I'm having the honor to be invited to speak to this Parliament of Cuba and air my views on topics I have been investigating for the last few years. First, I'd like to express my recognition to the Cuban people for this work they have been doing on the writing of the modern code that includes the several aspects of family and children's law, family law and children's rights, and that includes an updating of this document. I understand also that several institutions, expert and academic institutions, have been participating in the drafting. Also, it has been discussed publicly, And in Parliament, they have heard various experts from several fields. I think that gives your process legitimacy and allows for changing the text for its passing in the best way possible after taking into account the various views of people and citizens for this reform. I'll try to be very short and specific in my discussion. I have been asked to talk about the right of children to be heard on all matters concerning them, as stated in Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is a specific expression of the idea of children with rights, which allows to leave behind that whole idea of children as only a legal responsibility. Decisions made by public authorities, be them administrative or legal, should be taken into account the people who will be in the debate. In this sense, you cannot reach a decision without giving the citizens the right to participate and give his views. The same goes or should go for children. Children have the right to air their views. As subjects of right, they have the right to intervene in everything having to do with them, not only in legal terms, but also in the various fields of society where decisions on them are taken. The effort is aimed at having people who will be affected by the decision airing their views, and those views are taken into account by the various entities involved. For example, legally, you will take into account the opinion of the child depending on other actors involved. In the Chilean legal system, you hear children. If it's not the case, then the sentence can be annulled, and therefore all children have the right to be heard directly or through a representative, maybe a lawyer and so on. In this case, this principle is implemented, that is that children are to be heard in courts and they can participate as one side in a court trial. You cannot have a trial without the participation of parents. You cannot have a family trial without the intervention of parents and others that might be affected by a decision or a ruling. There's also special innovation, that is the possibility of participating and being heard by notaries when it comes to divorces. I think that in all levels you should have the participation of children. What we have said legally can be also applied administratively. You are going to make a decision on a child, his view should be heard for the authority to make a final decision. That possibility is based or provides the basis for children to have their fundamental rights met. They should have the right to participate and be taken into account by authorities as persons and citizens. I won't elaborate any further. I am very happy to participate in this public hearing, public event, and I hope that this code and these amendments make it possible for children to be heard at all levels, both judicial and administrative. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate and speak to this great parliament, as I have said before. Thank you, Dr. Lepe Molina, and I'll give the floor to Dr. Esther Vicente Rivera, professor of the Law School of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. Greetings, thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this important debate. I am Esther Vicente. I am a professor of Legal and Constitutional Law in the School of Law of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. I am founded in Intermujeres Puerto Rico, an organization that studies interactions between law and women and gender. From our organization, we have been closely following the drafting and now discussion on the Cuban Family Code draft. This draft includes advances, progress, and gives lessons to those of us who think that the law should be adapted to social changes in our modern communities. Before making some short comments, I'd like to congratulate you on the way you have drafted this document and the debate that is taking place on its contents among the communities, in the institutions, in the legal system, and in the government of Cuba. From Puerto Rico, through the social networks and the media, I have been able to see the great media and propaganda process for this draft. It is a complex, complete, and integrated process that is only possible in a society that is organized and that wants to make such an important law part of the ideas and shared social discourse. This effort of dissemination is promoting changes that bring about more equity and solidarity in society and in the families, and it must be emulated by in any general legal effort with an impact on the population. An important aspect that you see in the draft is the synergy it has with the Cuban Constitution from 2019 and the commitment with the guarantee of dignity as an integrated value for all the rights and equity and social justice without any discrimination based on gender, sexual orientation, age, and functional diversity, among other factors. The measures expressed in the draft really implement for everyday life the respect of the rights in the Constitution, makes them operational, and make it possible to be exercised within families regardless the way the families are structured. From the name of the project, the Code of the Families, you see the acknowledgement of diversity and multiplicity of forms in which people have their families in contemporary societies. That acknowledgement strengthens the principles of the Constitution and that are announced in Article 3 of the draft. It means that by interpreting the content of the draft and thinking in terms of the specific controversies in families, those in charge of the legal system must act in accordance with those principles. The use of inclusive language is another great achievement. You avoid the old way of saying that masculine includes feminine, something that turns masculine into a representative of a human thing and makes the children and women and girls and people with a gender invisible. It brings about significance or meanings through which you organize social practices. The language of legal standards has great authority and power. It defines rules, provides descriptions and interpretations and justifications for the practices it supports and those it condemns. Through the passing of equitable legal standards and inclusive ones, you can participate in the social changes that question definitions and limiting labels, and you can create new meanings, new legally accepted relations, and new contexts. The draft family code, along its full text, makes children and girls and teenagers visible and recognizes their autonomy and progressive capacity. It also shows the importance of families with their rights and co-responsibilities and with the fathers when it comes to raising children, and defines rights for both men and women. Thank you very much, Dr. Luis Vicente Rivera. I give the floor to Deputy Carla Santana Rodriguez, a student from the Law School of the Havana University and chair lady of the Students Federation, University Students Federation. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speaking as a young lady who is also part of those who have felt as protagonists of a transcendental moment in the history of Cuban society. We have also come here as actors of those changes and the interpretation of this proposed family code. The founding project of the revolution from its essence has been participatory, and this code is the result of that collective thinking of the Cuban people in their processes. This code, we believe, wants to be a platform for possibilities so that families can develop in the fullest and most integrated way possible in active life. There is an evident phenomenon in our realities. It is the number of diversities of family models in Cuba. That diversity is guaranteed by the web of rights in this text. It is a genuine way of implementing, exercising, and respecting democratic principles. No doubt, Cuban families have been bringing changes. They are diverse in their structures and their ways of organization, and this code make all those family realities visible. We are talking about rights for adult persons, elderly persons, and those who are disabled or vulnerable in the families. And with these inclusions, we do provide them self-determination and equal opportunities in the families for elderly persons. We understand the right of children and teenagers when they interact with others in the family, and those rights become more effective. We are talking about the widening of alimonies, communication in the family, parental responsibility, and so on. We also talk about concepts as progressive autonomy that invite you to recognize that in Cuban realities where children are protagonists and have so much participation in social life and where they carry responsibilities, cannot be the objects of decision. They must have a right to decide and have rights. We have also mentioned that the basis for gender equality in Cuban realities by including the right of women to spend their time in a balanced way and to protect them against family violence. That would have an impact on the other legal and family institutions. It also recognizes the stable unity of a common life project as another way of organizing couples' lives as an essential structure of the family. There is also the family responsibility from the emotional, educational, and training and upbringing approaches. The code also strengthens the role of courts in family law suits and the presence of these matters in before notaries and the protection and defense of people who are vulnerable. The draft of the Portugal Revolution has always been humanistic, and that's how the human people have been educated. This code reflects that willingness of understanding happiness, love, and dignity for persons. It is a protective legal text for all families and their members. I believe it is an opportunity to have a society that must reach out to the heart of all Cubans, because it is clarifying and protects collective responsibility. It is based on ethics and respect for differences. It provides us a horizon of a better justice. This code is a source of education to change ideas and bring Cuban society to a higher level of humanistic awareness. It is a revolution of common sense that is trying to do away with schemes and provide the collective dream of living in humanity, in solidarity and love. Maltese said that only love brings us melody, so this code is bringing us the best and most beautiful melody for Cuban families. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm inviting now Dr. Janet Alfaro Guillén, professor of Havana University and a court lawyer, to take the floor. Thank you very much to you all. Thank you and good morning. It is a great privilege to participate in this session. It is also a great responsibility. I wanted to refer first to the value of Article 3 of the draft Family Code. The principles of the relations between principles in the Family Code as proposed for Cuban society. Much has been said here and during the consultations and dissemination of the draft about the need for it, because the changing character of families here and everywhere. It is also said that the main changes in everywhere in the laws of countries have taken place in families or for families. These are principles that are based on equality and non-discrimination, and including solidarity, the high interest of our children, and the respect of elderly persons, and concluding with the important principle of family realities that invokes to and calls for any changes in families are taken into account in their context and that they are analyzed specifically. And all this provides the code a lasting character. With it, solutions to family dynamics are resolved based on its Article 3 or any of its paragraphs without the need for immediate law changes or amendments, because the principles are really attuned with the most updated and modern standards of family law, but also reflect the need, the most important needs to be met in our society for families. Secondly, this group of principles is backed by a catalog of rights that are regulated in the family, generally in Article 4, the rights of persons in general within families, and then it breaks it down by groups of age groups and so on, and that specify the exercise of rights for family members to act within it, whatever the kind of family it is, and the time based on these principles. From these principles and the subsidiary principles and laws from them, all the changes as to the roles and priorities of families and their dynamics in the code are present, and there is a great change as to successory questions I'm talking about heirs and inheritances. I mean, the inheritance after death. The family code is changing that completely revolutionary, in a revolutionary way as to wills and others. The main changes take place in the inheritances, of course, after the redefining of these roles. First, the capacity to inherit is changed in a very great way. Both you harmonize with the new forms of conceiving affiliation in the family code, and also to impede such affiliation if there is an inability. Also, there is the distribution of family roles and the importance of each of them within the family code. All of that will limit somehow to 4 big changes as to gender violence, the widening of the impact of the crime on families, the abandonment of elderly persons or neglect of them, and the impossibility or the limitation as to communication between the grandparents and grandchildren. There are these great limitations to have harmonious inheritance processes in the family. As to dictated inheritance, you have a more flexible approach to that when this condition has to do exclusively with family care to elderly persons, and it is expanded to other persons. There is an important adjustment in the forced inheritance that you know in Cuba, like specially protected heirs, and then there is a great transformation in the other form of inheritance as to the possibility of expanding or benefiting the quotas of those family members who have provided care to family members, so that they are also benefited after they have protected family members, even though according to the previous law they cannot be heirs. There is the possibility that they have a special protection in this form of inheritance, not only as children but also as parents or people who have any relationship with the dead person. That includes uncles and others. These provisions of the family code draft, these amendments to the civil law as to inheritance, including several articles of it, 13 final paragraphs amending the civil code based on the regulations of the family code, will allow us to have a more explicit and clearly and important definition of inheritance rights, so that in our society we really can change our family law. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Alfaro Guillén. And now I invite Dr. Raúl Vega Gardona, a professor and dean of the Law School of the Audiencia University, to take the floor. Good morning to you all. I'd like to first congratulate all women on March the 8th, and also thank you for the invitation to share some of my views about the family code draft. I refer to Article 4 on affiliation. There are great novelty, new things that are making this draft an important law compared to others. First, because there is a widening of affiliation forms, and also because we introduce new things as multiple parenthood, and also assisted human reproduction techniques, and solidarity attendance, which is one of the most debated upon articles, but it reflects the novelty and the just character of the family code. As to affiliation, the draft improves the technique for affiliation actions, particularly recognition, acknowledgement, challenging, or both. This is a matter that had brought doubts to lawyers, and now with a great work by the lawmakers who are writing it, it improves the way of defining family bonds. Another aspect that makes the draft new is family names. It has been said already. It is essential. This is the code of freedom. It is an emancipating code, meaning that it is not, you're not imposing changing the order of family names, but the couple will decide the order, and the code is proposing to reverse a situation that historically showed fatherhood rights as to family name order. As to adoption, it is also new. It comes from the Roman law, but there is an improvement of the family code structure, particularly as to institutional regulations, and also something that has been said before. There's no reference, there's no discrimination due to social or gender orientation to adopt a child. An important thing is the method being used as to adoption by integration. It is a new thing that is also creating a right from the Constitution, the right to live in the family. In this case, the possibility, in the case of assemblies that have been restructured, or mosaic families, as they call them, in which the child or teenager remains in a good family ambience. It is also important as to multi-parenthood. This is one of the newest things with this draft code, because it goes beyond Cuba, it goes beyond other spheres, beyond the family realm, but other realms, and they will be important as to aspects linked to affiliation. I like to refer also to affiliation having to do with assisted human reproduction techniques. Cuba has had a program for non-fertile couples. However, it was not in the previous family code. It did not regulate all aspects of this. Now it is in the law, meaning the legal effects of affiliation resulting from assisted reproductive techniques, which is a new thing, including post-mortem affiliation resulting from assisted reproductive techniques. All this must be stated. All this is stated from the intervention of state control and has a specific mentioning of
de las familias de brindarle
solidarity gestation so that people can have a family. That's also a right from the Constitution, and it is part of the draft. As to solidarity gestation, there are also the controls it will be put under as an institution. It will be authorized by court, by law, and the draft at all time prohibits any money, any payment. Soon it will be discussed by the National Assembly. So Article 4 of affiliation, having to do with affiliation matters, is one of the top topics for families in Cuba. And it is proposed that the draft includes the aspiration of a series of families that cannot procreate now naturally. The draft is proposing for them the opening of a door in an inclusive and just way based on the paradigm of the dignity that is present and expressed in our Constitution. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cardona.
Now we would like to give the floor once again to Aida Carmen Mayer de Carlucci, full member of the National Academy of Law of Buenos Aires, Argentina. about solidarity, gestation, or pregnancy. As in Argentina, we call substitution pregnancy. But you have decided to add this adjective, which is so perfect, gestation or pregnancy in solidarity, because this is when this solidarity is shown. That's why in Article 128 demands from this pregnancy in solidarity might occur between persons of the same family, of people who are close in affection. And in this we have to consider a demand and not to damage the health of those who are participating in this process of solidarity. And as happens in some other countries, let's say in the Greece rules or legislation, all these requirements that appear in this project, and we hope it turns into a code, because it's going to be a progress and advance, not only for Cuba, but also for Latin America. All these needs the judge to control the fulfilling of all these requirements. And as it couldn't be other way around, they are to consider the superior interest of kids, of children, that might be born from this procedure. And if the judge does not authorize, or I didn't go to ask for authorization before the judge, I mean that person who is not meeting the law, who is not subject to these controls to verify that we all, and even pregnant women, and also pregnant women have this free will to be in gestation process, they then need to be led by what it is, natural filiation. So it's not going to be the father or the mother of that child. So what I mean is that in this code, and I say it is not a draft, but it's a code, because the participation that the people, the whole members of community, not only academicians at the beginning, but also all those in this process talking about pregnancy in solidarity, and this project that is wanted for Latin America and for Cuba, this project puts together, conciliates three important values of the new constitution in Cuba. One is the respect of the autonomy, of the freedom. We see that in the progressive autonomy in children. We see that as we're in this pregnancy in solidarity, and the autonomy of all parties involved in this process of filiation through science. So we are talking about this freedom, but also, in second place, solidarity. That's why parents have all these attributions, but also duties that we have established to work in the education of the children for the achievement of more solidarity in society, and at the same time that leads to non-discrimination and to the principle of equity, equality, which is considered in all constitutional law.
Gracias, doctora.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And I would like to invite to take the floor to Montserrat Pereña, Professor of Civil Law from the University of Spain. I'm Montserrat Pereña, Professor of Civil Law in the University of Rey Juan Carlos in Spain. Before speaking, I would like to thank for the invitation to participate in this debate of this project, which was published in the year 2022. If we consider disability in our code. We had to think about the incorporation in a crossed manner, the evaluation, the assessment of disability and the people with disability, and this is considered in a law by the in a definition by the United Nations since the year 2016, and to consider their preferences and the respect of their lives. So, since from Article 3 of these projects, they speak about the respect for the will of the adults and people who are disabled. I would like to express the main positive issues of this project, and that include the culture of our peoples, that we might put together in 4 items: sensibility, transversal issues, and the other 2 I shall tackle then. We are talking about different situations like disability with specific differences to all persons, which are considered in different articles of this code, considered in Article 4 as an special right that establishes self-determination, preferences, and equality of opportunities of adults, persons which are in disability situation. Secondly, the transversal position that speaks about the participation of all associations and entities that consider disability in citizens. The third good point I would like to highlight is the respect of the willingness of people, respecting their dignity, which is mentioned in the whole project, the respect to the will, seen not only for disabled people, but also in the recognition of some family law entities as the parental affection. In 4th place, looking for balance. This is a balance which is needed between autonomy and protection that does not exclude the benefit of the person and his or her will, and it's not excluding either the support which is needed, as seen in Articles 39 and 40, 54, 127, 275, just to mention some of them. If we analyze all this process, could be good to speak about institutions that, according to this project, include a positive right with enough regulations which are necessary, because our way to see the reality of people who are disabled, and some of those items show that this code is very realistic, that shows how things happen in real life. This is regulated in Article 329 of the code, considering practical items on how to determine the protection of children, and also how to deal with adults in Article 329 of this code, and in Article 352 speaks about the need to keep the person living in its family and social context. And a new thing about this project is the regulation of future protection, including in Article 422, that speaks as well about a legal development to give full participation to the manifestations of autonomy and dignity of disabled people. This project, I believe, makes the family law in Cuba to consider the inclusion of disabled people and to support them as much as necessary. And they speak also about the thought of Portales, who said in his words, and I quote, "Laws are not acts of power. Those are acts of prudency, justice, and sense. This is the authority of a priest who are not supposed to lose that laws are for men and not men for laws. And the laws might get adapted to the situation of the peoples." And I unquote. And this is a way to see that when we know reality and when we are brave enough to face some realities, and most of all, when we are prudent, we are able to achieve balance. Now I would like to thank Dr. Pereña Vicente for her outstanding participation, and I would like to give the floor to Vicencio Barba from the La Sapienza University in Italy. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the invitation to participate in this outstanding event. I'm totally honored because this is also in the midst of a process that has been used to make legal this family's code. The image that any person from the legal world gets by reading this project of the family's code is, of course, a code of great importance, and it could be relevant if we consider the specialized consultation for academic centers and institutions that have been taking place. I also believe that it is important to mention as one important element is that there are no equal documents in Italy in the process for the legitimation of this code. And we find that there is people's consultation, and most of all, there will be a referendum to pass this code. I think this is an issue of great relevance, which is also important to appreciate this position because it represents an element that, at least in Italy, is not usual, and in my opinion is also crucial, fundamental for the full legitimation of this law. It's a very important code indeed, and taking the time that has given to me, I would like to make some short remarks on the modifications, about the amendments which are included in the inheritance law, the family code that determines a totally different mode to see families according to a natural family concept, determines and means the need to change some laws, some norms, some rules for inheritance. And in the code is very well included and considered because it also thinks about the possibility of drafting wills. I guess this is very important to analyze the rules in which wills are considered, and there is a specific article speaking about the drafting of wills and the non-patrimonial inheritance, as well as the situation sustained in the existence of a person. I believe this is a matter of great importance, since we can be concrete when saying that the will is not only a patrimonial act, but it's also a way through which a person might put into stake some non-patrimonial properties. And it's also relevant the fact that because it goes with the principles and values of the New York Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, And as I said, it's important the amendment of the rule when they establish that the disabled person has the right to make a will and to express its will through its support or with reasonable changes. I think this is a fundamental rule mainly because this way the Cuban law is located in a situation goes together with the principles on the Convention of New York towards disabled people. A very important one when concepts and are changed, as well as the approach and the concept of disability from the medical viewpoint up to an approach with a social content considering as well human rights for disabled people. The rule in Article 484 of the Civil Code is amended here, as I said, and recognizes that disabled people are able to draft a will despite all difficulties or obstacles they find in speaking about the final will that might be supported with the necessary changes and support. I think this is a Families Code of great importance, very innovative, and I believe the approval might be a very important step forward that shall place Cuba among the countries with a family code which is better than some others that might be found in other European countries.
Muchas gracias, doctor.
Thank you so much, Professor Barba, and we would like to give the floor to the outstanding professor from the University of Havana, Patricia Aris.
Buenos días, muchísimas gracias por la invitación.
Good morning, thanks so much for inviting me to take the floor. I would like to convey my salutations to all Cuban women for this International Women's Day. I've been for 40 years working, giving directions and investigating, doing research about families. I would like, first of all, to speak about the different kind of families we have and the different sexual preferences in the midst of those family diversity. I would like to speak special about homoaffective families which has been rejected many times by the people's opinion and now are included in this new project of a Families Code. And I would like to highlight 4 main issues. First, homoaffective couples and homoparental families exist in Cuba, and they have existed since many years ago. It is very much true that they are not majority in our society, but giving rights to these kind of families is a debt we have even with prior generations that were invisible for us, silenced by the stigmas and the social rejection. Thinking that moralist or conditions considered under moral prejudices give us the possibility to deny these kind of families is very subjective and it's not given a historical and social side to all this. I have witnessed the pain and the suffering that these families go through, living, denying their sexual identity to the origin family, to their children, to their co-workers. They have been going through this and they may avoid these sufferings and this pain because this is based on homophobic feelings. What are asking these families for when they ask for support and help? They are not talking about the fact if they love their spouses or children, but saying or not saying this, dealing with this information, they are afraid of disapproval. They're asking for protection for the kids from homo-negative feelings. Those are the real concerns we can find in these homo families, if we make legal their position in our society, diminishing this human pain. In the third place, I would like to mention from the psychological viewpoint that social orientation does not commit or risk its moral position. A person that is left-handed, just because he is left-handed, might be a suspect of misbehaving.
Nada que ver.
The moral condition of a person is not related to the sexual orientation of preference, and is not related either to the psychological health or to the capacity that we human beings have to love and take care of others. The fourth place, I would like to highlight that false ideas have been managed speaking about children that live in these kind of families. Homo-affective families are unions of people who have children in prior relations. The social idea of which is the fate of these kind of kids, or the cognitive or emotional development of this child is going to be normal or not. And a family indeed is a community of love, and the most important thing is the affection relations. Since the beginning of this century, international agencies, psychiatric and psychology have demonstrated, have shown that the development of children is based on affection, on the responsibility of the parents, and that all kind of families have similar possibilities to give healthy and protective environment to children. And the evaluation of parental assessment shall be done without prejudices of the sexual orientation of the parents. Some other kind of families, like monoparental families, usually led by women in Cuba, had not so many doubts or questions about as a possibility of adopting children in this family context. From this viewpoint, which is included in the project of the code, I applaud, I welcome, and I support that diverse families are also to be included in this big project, with all the rights for dignity and for taking care and protecting and to live together in a healthy and happy manner. Thank you so much.
Finalmente, al agradecer a la doctora Patricia su excelente intervención.
And finally, to support Dr. Patricia, I would like to give the floor for final words to Leonardo Pérez Gallardo, professor of the University of Havana and president of the Family and Civil Law in Cuba.
Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to congratulate women who are in this room today, and two old women in the country in this project. We have their participation and the intelligence of outstanding women from this country. It's a good opportunity on March 8th, year 2022, for celebrating this Parliament hearing when we are celebrating the 47th anniversary of the enforcement of the Family Code from 75. I would like to thank Jose Luis Toledo. I would like to thank the Speaker and the Vice Speaker of the National Assembly, the President and Vice President of the Supreme People's Court in Cuba. I would like to thank likewise to all those who have taken the floor, coming from different universities as well, from Latin America, Europe, and to the professors who are in this room, both from the University of Havana and some other universities and some other schools. And also to thank Patricia Ares Mucio, who has been specially working in this Families Code. I would like to speak about three main issues. First, the legal nature that gets this project with the participation of the people and the consultation is a code that is ongoing and also supports the academic participation from different institutions in the country, and we have been able to witness this stage of specialized consultation and the contribution of different disciplines like sociology, psychology, medicine in different expressions, and demography that has enabled us to go deeper into different sizes that also speaks about a code with the scientific support. This is important. We couldn't forgive ourselves if we do not consider these family codes, if we are not able to achieve harmony between the academy and the people's knowledge and the people's wisdom that, of course, shall be, and it is already, the basis of this family's code from the contribution that might be done. The code has to be very similar to current Cuba, because it's an inclusion to diversity and different kinds of families. In the code, we are ecumenic enough to include different kinds of families in which they will have a legal status and the inclusion of proscription of discrimination, the proscription of family violence, and the total success of love, affection, and happiness. The happiness that people are looking for that goes beyond the peace which is given to people. Because as Alejo Carpentier said in his novel, El Reino de este Mundo, people are looking for happiness beyond the happiness that is corresponding to each of them. And people are able to love, no matter if there are pandemic times or not. People are able to love and eager to love. And this is included also in the Families Code project that is looking for the happiness of the people who are members of family. As the second point of this Families Code, we can say that it is looking for saving the dates, paying the dates of the asymmetry in the laws, this power for women and men in the most vulnerable groups, in the social context, the possibility of thinking about elderly people, to think about disabled people, about this look that is included in the code once and again. This asymmetric position might be considered only if we look for balance, and then we shall receive the compensation in this matter of relation between men and women, and the fact to support the rights of elderly person in the context of the family, and also to consider human rights for all of them. We have to think about the understanding of the philosophy of this project only if we have a conventional language respecting conventions and international treaties based on human rights ratified by the Republic of Cuba, and we are also to consider the principles, values, and rules of the Constitution. Once and again, we have to analyze the Families Code, saying that this is just the main artery, or one of the main arteries that irrigates blood to the legal system in Cuba. This project, of course, develops the constitutional project that was, is, and shall be a very important movement in the legal constitution, because since the year when we had the first code, we included the plural nature of our families. We know it's difficult, and it's going to be very difficult, the path of this transit of family code to families code. this S in the word family. This plural condition goes beyond law and also poses a very important meaning in this branch of law. Speaking about families in plural make us able to see to visualize different kind of families and its action and participation in the society, which is not included in 1975 code. Only this way we can speak about inclusion, plural condition. We can speak about a family which have more and more participation and have more and more democracy. The last idea I would like to share here is that Cuba, through this Families Code project, is pretending to include, to educate, and this is one of the main issues with the people's consultation, is the education, and we law workers are to receive the knowledge from social sources, the knowledge from the people, and this makes law people's law, to have this law which speaks about dignity. And let us remember Article 40 of the Constitution that speaks about the Carta Magna. The Cuban families are asking for a hug, for an embrace, and this is in the hands of law to give, and this might be eternally given with the Families Code. Thank you so much.
Se da por concluido.
We would like then to conclude this public hearing. This session is adjourned.